With blood roaring in his ears, James Thornton cut down the Apache woman from the makeshift gallows as angry townspeople reached for their guns. Her dark eyes locked with his as she whispered a name that sent ice through his veins. She was the daughter of Chief Nantan, the most feared warrior in the Arizona Territory. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The dust hung heavy in the midday heat of Tucson, Arizona Territory, 1885. James Thornton sat atop his stallion, a striking figure despite his 48 years. His grey-streaked black hair was partially hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, and his weathered face bore the lines of a man who had known both fortune and tragedy. The once young cattle baron who had built an empire from nothing now possessed more land than any man could ride in a day. But the vastness of his holdings did little to fill the emptiness in his heart. The crowd's shouting drew his attention to the makeshift gallows erected in the town square. James had come to Tucson merely to finalize a cattle deal, not to witness an execution. Yet something in the commotion made him guide his horse closer. "Hang the savage!" someone called from the crowd, the voice thick with hatred. "Justice for stolen property!" shouted another. James frowned, his hand instinctively resting on the revolver at his hip as the sheriff and his deputies dragged a figure toward the gallows. His breath caught when he realized it was a woman, an Apache woman, her wrists bound tightly, her chin held high despite the jeers and threats surrounding her. She couldn't have been more than 25. With eyes as dark and defiant as midnight, her traditional dress was torn and dirty, but she moved with dignity, refusing to stumble even as the deputies roughly pushed her forward. There was something in her gaze that reached across the dusty square and stirred memories James had long buried. Memories of Catherine, his wife, who had faced her own death with similar courage 15 years ago. "Yeah, what's her crime?" James called out, his deep voice cutting through the noise. Sheriff Wilcox, a man James knew to be reasonable in most matters, but weak-willed when facing an angry mob, looked up with surprise. "Thornton, didn't expect to see you in town today." The sheriff adjusted his belt nervously. This Apache was caught stealing from Whitaker's general store. "Took silver and supplies, and that warrants hanging." James's voice was measured but cold. "Times are tense. Thornton, 3 families were attacked by Apaches last month. The town's calling for blood." James dismounted, his tall frame commanding attention as he approached the gallows. The crowd parted before him, many recognizing the wealthiest rancher in the territory. James Thornton's word carried weight from Tucson to the territorial capital. "Has she had a trial?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. The sheriff's silence was confirmation enough. "Since when do we hang people without trial in this territory?" James's voice was quiet, but carried a steel edge. "Last I checked, this wasn't Apache country, but it wasn't lawless either." "She don't speak English, Thornton," called out Whitaker, the storekeeper, his face flushed with anger. "What kind of trial would you give her?" James looked at the woman, who stared back at him without flinching. In her eyes, he saw not guilt, but a wary resignation, as if this outcome was expected from the white man's world. "I'll take responsibility for her," James said suddenly, the words surprising even himself. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "You've gone soft, Thornton," someone called out. James turned slowly, his hand still resting on his pistol. "I've offered to take custody of the prisoner. If she's guilty, I'll see she works off her debt. If not, then we won't have innocent blood on our hands." He turned back to Sheriff Wilcox. "Unless you're eager to explain to Governor Zulik why Tucson is hanging women without trial." The mention of the territorial governor, a man who owed James more than a few favors, caused the sheriff to reconsider. "On your head be it, Thornton," Wilcox said finally. But if she causes any trouble—" "She won't," James interrupted, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. He approached the Apache woman, who watched him with a mixture of suspicion and confusion. The deputies reluctantly untied her hands. "My name is James Thornton," he said slowly, uncertain if she understood any English. He pointed to himself. "James." The woman rubbed her wrists where the ropes had cut into her skin. After a long moment, she touched her chest. "Niall," she said, her voice low and musical despite its edge of distrust. James nodded, then gestured to his horse. "You'll come with me to my ranch. You'll be safe there." She didn't move, her eyes darting from James to the hostile crowd, clearly weighing whether one white man was safer than many. "I won't harm you," James added, wishing he knew how to convey sincerity across the barrier of language and justified mistrust. Niall studied him for another long moment before giving a barely perceptible nod. James helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her, conscious of the rigid tension in her body as she sat before him. As they rode out of Tucson, the whispers followed them like dust devils. James Thornton, the hard-bitten cattleman who rarely showed mercy in business or to rustlers, had just saved an Apache woman from the gallows. Some would call it madness, others might call it a death wish. James wasn't sure what to call it himself. He only knew that something in her defiant dignity had awakened a part of him he thought had died with Catherine. Whether that awakening would lead to redemption or ruin remained to be seen. The sun beat down mercilessly as they left Tucson behind, heading north toward the sprawling Thornton Ranch, where new dangers and possibilities awaited them both. The journey to Thornton Ranch stretched for miles across sun-baked terrain. James felt Niall's rigid posture gradually soften as the distance between them and Tucson grew, though she remained alert, her head turning at every unfamiliar sound. He wondered what thoughts passed behind those guarded eyes, what story had brought her to that gallows, and why no one from her people had come to her aid. "There," James said, pointing toward the horizon where the main house of his ranch finally came into view. Home. Thornton Ranch spread across the landscape like a small kingdom. The sprawling main house, built of sturdy timber and local stone, stood as a testament to James's success. Nearby stood a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, a large barn, corrals, and various outbuildings. Cattle dotted the distant pastures, and the windmill turned lazily in the afternoon breeze. As they approached, several workers looked up from their tasks. James noted their expressions shift from welcome to wariness when they spotted Niall seated before him. Miguel, his foreman for over a decade, set down a saddle he'd been repairing and walked toward them, his weathered face creased with concern. "Mr. Thornton," Miguel nodded respectfully, his eyes flicking briefly to Niall. "I wasn't expecting you back until tomorrow." "Change of plans, Miguel," James replied, dismounting before carefully helping Niall down. She accepted his assistance but quickly stepped away, maintaining distance. "This is Niall. She'll be staying with us for a while." Miguel's eyebrows rose slightly, but years of loyalty kept his questions in check. "Yes, sir. Shall I have Maria prepare a room in the main house?" James hesitated. Having an Apache woman staying in his home would cause talk, but the alternative, housing her with the workers, seemed equally problematic. Yes, he decided. The small room at the east end should do, and ask Maria to find some suitable clothes. He glanced at Niall's torn dress, then back to Miguel. There was trouble in town. She was falsely accused. Miguel nodded, understanding more than James had said. "I'll tell Maria." "Dinner will be ready in an hour." As Miguel walked away, Niall spoke, her voice low but clear. "Why?" James turned to her, surprised. You speak English? Little, she replied, making a small gesture with her thumb and forefinger. Why you take me? The directness of her question caught him off guard. James removed his hat, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. Well, because hanging someone without trial isn't justice, he said finally. It's murder. Neol studied him, her dark eyes seeming to search for deception. Your people, not care about justice for Apache. Her broken English carried the weight of bitter truth. James couldn't deny the atrocities committed against her people, nor the retribution exacted by the Apache in return. The cycle of violence stretched back decades. And not all my people think the same, he said, knowing how inadequate it sounded. A hint of something, perhaps skepticism, perhaps amusement, flickered across her face. You different? I try to be, James answered honestly. Before she could respond, the front door of the main house opened, and Maria, the housekeeper who had served the Thornton family since Catherine was alive, hurried down the steps. She was a plump woman in her 60s, with grey-streaked black hair and kind eyes that widened at the sight of Neol. Dios mío, she murmured, crossing herself quickly before composing her features. Welcome to Thornton Ranch, señorita. Come, you must be tired and hungry. Neol hesitated, looking from Maria to James. It's all right, James assured her. Maria will help you get settled. You're safe here. Neol's expression suggested she reserved judgment on that claim, but she followed Maria toward the house, her movements graceful despite her exhaustion. James handed his horse's reins to a stable boy and walked toward his office in the west wing of the house, aware of the curious glances from his workers. News would spread quickly that James Thornton had brought an Apache woman to his ranch. By morning, the gossip would have reached every homestead within 20 miles. In his office, James poured himself a glass of whiskey and stood by the window, watching as the sun began its descent. The land stretched before him, thousands of acres that had once represented everything he wanted. Now it felt like an incomplete legacy. His wife gone, no children to inherit, just an empire of grass and cattle built by a man who had nowhere else to direct his energies. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew his attention. Through the window, he spotted a rider coming fast, Tom Wilkins, one of his most trusted hands who had been in Tucson on business. James set down his glass. The speed of the approaching rider suggested urgent news, and he had a sinking feeling it concerned the woman now under his protection. Whatever trouble he had invited by bringing Neol to his ranch was about to make itself known. James strode out to meet Tom as the rider pulled his lathered horse to a stop in front of the main house. The young man's face was flushed, his expression grim as he dismounted. "Mr. Thornton," Tom said, removing his hat. Town's in an uproar over what happened. Whitaker's gathering men. Says you had no right to interfere with justice. James's jaw tightened. Justice requires a trial, Tom. You know that as well as I do. Yes, sir, but... Tom hesitated, lowering his voice. They're saying she's not just any Apache. Word is, she's connected to Chief Nantan's band, the same ones who raided the Maxwell homestead last month. The news gave James pause. Chief Nantan was known throughout the territory, a fierce warrior who had refused to surrender to reservation life, leading one of the few remaining free Apache bands. His reputation for ruthlessness toward those who crossed him was well earned, but so was his strict code of honor with those who dealt fairly. Did she say anything to you about that? Tom asked. No, James replied, and I didn't ask. Her people aren't my concern, only that she wasn't hanged without a hearing. Tom nodded, though his expression remained troubled. Whitaker was talking about riding out here tomorrow with some men. Sheriff seemed reluctant, but he might not have a choice if the mood in town doesn't settle. I appreciate the warning, Tom. Get your horse seen to and get some rest. As Tom led his mount toward the stables, James stood in the yard, considering this new information. If Niall was indeed connected to Chief Nantan, her presence at Thornton Ranch carried implications beyond a simple act of mercy. It could mean the difference between peace and war for the entire region. Inside the house, James found Maria emerging from the east wing. "She is bathing, Senor," Maria reported. "And I gave her clean clothes, some things that—" She hesitated. "Some things that belonged to Mrs. Thornton. I hope that was right." James felt an unexpected tightness in his chest at the mention of Catherine's clothes. For 15 years, he had kept her belongings, unable to part with them, but unwilling to look upon them. Now they would clothe a woman from a world Catherine had never known. "That's fine, Maria," he said quietly. "How is she?" Maria's expression softened. "Exhausted, I think, and wary, like a wild thing that expects a trap. But she thanked me, in English and Apache both." She paused. "There are marks on her wrists, Senor, from the ropes, and older scars too. She has known cruelty." James nodded, unsurprised but troubled by the confirmation. "Make sure she eats well tonight. She's probably been half-starved." "Si, Senor." Maria hesitated again. The men are talking. They wonder why you brought her here." "Let them wonder," James replied, more sharply than he intended. Seeing Maria's hurt expression, he softened his tone. "I'm sorry, Maria. It's been a long day. Please tell Niall I'd like to speak with her after dinner, if she's willing." Maria nodded and retreated to the kitchen. James returned to his office, where he spent the next hour reviewing ranch accounts without truly seeing the figures before him. His mind kept drifting to the Apache woman and the complications her presence would bring. When dinner was announced, James entered the dining room to find Niall already seated at the long oak table, looking both regal and uncomfortable. The transformation was striking. Her long black hair, now clean, fell in a thick braid over one shoulder. She wore a simple blue dress that had once belonged to Catherine, altered hastily by Maria to fit her smaller frame. The dress was outdated by a decade, but suited her in its simplicity. Niall met his gaze steadily as he took his seat at the head of the table. In the soft lamplight, James noticed details he had missed earlier: the high cheekbones, the small scar near her left eyebrow, the intensity in her dark eyes that suggested both intelligence and caution. "You look," James began, then stopped, unsure of the appropriate compliment. "Different," Niall supplied, with the hint of a smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Yes," he agreed, relieved when Maria began serving the food, a hearty beef stew with fresh bread. "Different." They ate in silence for several minutes. James noticed that despite what must have been significant hunger, Niall ate with deliberate care, watching him occasionally as if to ensure her manners were appropriate. "You have big house," she said finally. "Many cattle. You are important man." "Some would say so," James replied. "I've worked hard for what I have." Niall nodded, considering this. "Why important man help Apache woman? Truth, please." The directness of her question, combined with the request for honesty, reminded James that whatever cultural differences separated them, he was dealing with someone perceptive and forthright. "I've seen too much injustice in my life," he said after a moment. "Too many people taking the law into their own hands." "When I saw you on that gallows," he paused, searching for words. "It wasn't right. Not just Apache woman," Niall said quietly, setting down her spoon. "My father is Nantan." The confirmation of Tom's news struck James like a physical blow. He set down his own utensils, studying her with new understanding. "Chief Nantan is your father." Niall nodded, her expression guarded as she watched for his reaction. "I was in Tucson to trade. Some men, they recognize me, say I steal, lie." Her eyes flashed with anger. "They hate Apache, hate my father more." "Why were you alone?" James asked. "Surely your father wouldn't send his daughter to Tucson without protection." A shadow crossed Niall's face. "I choose to go alone. My father..." She struggled for words. "We disagree. About future, about white man's world." The implications of her statement hung in the air between them. James wondered what kind of disagreement would send a chief's daughter unprotected into a hostile town. "Will your father come looking for you?" he asked, thinking of the potential consequences, both for Niall and for his ranch. Niall's gaze dropped to her plate. Maybe, maybe not. When she looked up again, her eyes held a fierce determination. "But I tell you truth now. If men come from town tomorrow, do not fight for me." "I will go." "That's not going to happen," James said firmly. "Why?" she challenged. "Why risk for stranger, for enemy?" James held her gaze. "Because I gave my word that you'd be safe here, and because I don't consider you my enemy, Niall." Something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but perhaps the first step toward it. Outside, the desert wind picked up, whistling around the eaves of the house like a warning of storms to come. Dawn broke over Thornton Ranch with the promise of heat to come. James had slept poorly, his dreams troubled by images of gallows and Catherine's face mysteriously transforming into Niall's. He rose early, strapping on his gun belt before heading downstairs. The weight of the Colt revolver against his hip was a reminder of harsher realities that the morning light couldn't dispel. In the kitchen, he found Maria already preparing breakfast, the smell of coffee and frying bacon filling the air. "She's outside, senor," Maria said before he could ask, nodding toward the back door. "Been up since before sunrise, just sitting there, watching the hills." James poured himself coffee and stepped onto the back porch. Niall sat on the top step, her back straight, her gaze fixed on the eastern horizon where the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. She wore a simple skirt and blouse that Maria must have altered overnight, her hair once again in a single thick braid. "Morning," James said, settling beside her with a respectable distance between them. "Did you sleep?" "Some," Niall replied without turning. "Your house is quiet." "Different." "Different from what?" She gestured vaguely. "From camp. Always people, always sounds. Here, too much space." She finally looked at him. "Too empty." The observation struck closer to home than she could know. James sipped his coffee, considering her words. "It wasn't always empty. My wife, Catherine, she filled it with life, music, laughter." "After she died," he shrugged, surprised at himself for sharing such personal thoughts. Niall studied him with those penetrating eyes. "How long she's gone?" 15 years this October. "And no children." James shook his head. "We wanted them. God knows we tried, but it wasn't meant to be." Niall nodded, accepting this information without the awkward sympathies white folks typically offered. "My mother died when I was small. Father raised me to be strong, to lead someday." A shadow passed over her face. "But his way is only war, only old ways. I see different path." "Is that why you left?" James asked. Before she could answer, the sound of approaching riders drew their attention. James stood, instinctively positioning himself between Niall and the approaching threat. In the distance, a group of at least a dozen men on horseback approached the main gate. "Whitaker," James muttered, recognizing the storekeeper's squat figure at the lead. "Go inside, Neol." "No," she said firmly, rising to stand beside him. "I not hide." James wanted to argue, but recognized the same stubborn dignity he'd witnessed at the gallows. Instead, he called to Miguel, who was already hurrying across the yard with several ranch hands. "Get the men armed, Miguel. But no one fires unless I give the order." Miguel nodded grimly, dispatching workers to strategic positions around the property. By the time Whitaker's group reached the main gate, Thornton's men were visible on the porch, near the barn, and along the fence line, all armed, all waiting. Whitaker reined in his horse, his face flushed with either exertion or anger. Sheriff Wilcox sat uncomfortably on his mount beside him, along with about 15 townsmen, some merchants James recognized, others rough-looking characters he didn't. "Thornton," Whitaker called out, "we've come for the Apache woman. This doesn't have to get messy." James walked down the porch steps and across the yard, stopping at the gate but not opening it. His hand rested casually near his revolver. "You're trespassing on private property, Whitaker," he said evenly. "Turn around and go home." "Now see here, Thornton," Whitaker blustered. "That savage stole from me. You had no right to interfere with justice." "What evidence do you have that she stole anything?" James demanded. "Did anyone actually see her take something?" "Don't need to see it. Everyone knows Apaches are thieves and killers." "And this one?" Whitaker pointed a trembling finger toward Neol, who had followed James to the gate. "This one's the daughter of that devil Nantan." A murmur ran through the group of riders. Some looked nervous at this confirmation, others more determined. "Sheriff," James addressed Wilcox directly, ignoring Whitaker, "you know this isn't legal. You can't just hang someone based on Whitaker's say-so." Wilcox shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Look, Thornton, I don't want trouble, but folks are scared. 3 homesteads raided last month. The Maxwell children—" "We're not harmed by this woman," James interrupted firmly. "If you want to arrest her, bring charges and give her a fair trial. That's your right, but I won't hand her over to a lynch mob." "You'd protect an Apache over your own kind," called someone from the back of the group. James's expression hardened. "I'm protecting the law, something the rest of you seem to have forgotten." Neol stepped forward then, her voice clear and stronger than James had yet heard it. "I take nothing from store. I come to trade, bring silver, bring crafts." She pointed at Whitaker. "This man, he take my things, say they stolen, then call others to hang me." Whitaker's face reddened further. "She's lying. You can't believe a word these savages say." "Actually," came a new voice, "I believe I can confirm the lady's account." All heads turned to see a well-dressed man on a fine chestnut gelding approaching from the direction of Tucson. James recognized him immediately, Judge William Harrison, the circuit court judge who traveled throughout the territory administering justice. The judge rode up to the gathering, tipping his hat to James and Neol before addressing the sheriff. "Sheriff Wilcox, I'm disappointed to find you participating in what appears to be an illegal posse." "Judge Harrison," Wilcox stammered. "We weren't, that is. I arrived in Tucson late yesterday," the judge continued, "and heard a most disturbing account of an attempted lynching. Imagine my surprise when Mrs. Winters, you know her, the milliner whose shop is next to Whitaker's, told me she witnessed this young woman being accosted by Mr. Whitaker himself, who confiscated her goods and claimed she was stealing." Whitaker's bluster deflated visibly. "Mrs. Winters doesn't know what she saw. The Apache had silver and handcrafted items to trade," Judge Harrison finished for him. "Items which, I'm told, were still in your store desk when Mrs. Winters insisted the sheriff search the premises after the young lady was taken away." A murmur ran through the gathered men, several of whom were now looking at Whitaker with suspicion. Furthermore, the judge continued, I understand Mr. Thornton intervened to prevent a gross miscarriage of justice, for which, sir, you have my gratitude. He nodded to James. Thus, the law must apply equally to all in this territory if we're ever to have true civilization. The sheriff, clearly relieved to have an excuse to retreat, turned to Whitaker. Seems we've been misled, gentlemen. Time to head back to town. This isn't over, Whitaker hissed, but his threat sounded hollow as several of his supporters were already turning their horses around. As the group dispersed, Judge Harrison dismounted and approached the gate, which Miguel opened for him. Perfect timing, Your Honor, James said, extending his hand. The judge smiled as they shook hands. Providence, perhaps, or good fortune that Mrs. Winters has such a strong sense of justice. He turned to Niall and bowed slightly. Ma'am, I apologize for the treatment you received in Tucson. Rest assured, Mr. Whitaker will face consequences for his actions. Niall studied him with cautious eyes before inclining her head in acknowledgement. Thank you. Will you join us for breakfast, Judge? James offered. Maria's just about to serve. I'd be delighted, Harrison replied. And perhaps afterward, we might discuss a matter of some delicacy regarding the lady's father. I've had certain communications from the Indian agency that might interest you both. James felt Niall tense beside him. Whatever news the judge brought about Chief Nantan, it seemed their troubles were far from over. Breakfast was a tense affair despite Maria's delicious fare of eggs, bacon, fresh biscuits, and strong coffee. Judge Harrison made polite conversation about the ranch and territorial politics, but James could sense the weight of unspoken matters hanging over the table. Niall ate quietly, her posture alert, her dark eyes occasionally meeting James's with unspoken questions. When Maria had cleared the dishes and served more coffee, Judge Harrison finally broached the subject that had brought him to Thornton Ranch. I received a telegram from Fort Bowie 2 days ago, he began, his tone careful. Colonel Andrews is preparing a campaign against the remaining free Apache bands, particularly Chief Nantan's group. Niall's hand tightened around her coffee cup, but her expression remained composed. The Indian agency has authorized the use of all necessary force to bring them to the San Carlos reservation, Harrison continued. The army plans to move within the week. Necessary force, James repeated, the euphemism tasting bitter on his tongue. He had seen what necessary force meant when applied to native peoples, and you're telling us this why, exactly? Harrison glanced at Niall. Because I believe there may be an opportunity to avoid bloodshed. He turned back to James. The territorial governor respects you, Thornton. So does Colonel Andrews, though he'd never admit it to your face. If Chief Nantan could be persuaded to negotiate, my father does not negotiate with bluecoats, Niall said firmly. Many promises made, all broken. Harrison nodded, unsurprised by her response. I understand his reluctance, given the history, but the alternatives are grim. The army will pursue his band until they're captured or... He left the sentence unfinished. Or dead, Niall completed bluntly. This is why I left. My father sees only fighting until last Apache falls. I see... She struggled for words. I see need for new path. For living, not just dying with honor. James studied her face, struck by the courage it must have taken to challenge her father's leadership, to seek a different future for her people, even when it meant leaving them. What exactly are you suggesting, Judge? James asked. Harrison set down his coffee cup. That we arrange a meeting between Chief Nantan and representatives from the territorial government. Neutral ground, guaranteed safe passage, a chance to discuss terms that might be more accommodating than what's typically offered. "And you think I can help with this?" James asked skeptically. "You've shown yourself to be a man who believes in justice, Thornton. The chief's daughter is under your protection. That creates a connection, a potential opening for dialogue." Harrison paused. "And frankly, the governor would prefer a peaceful resolution. Military campaigns are expensive and politically complicated." James glanced at Niall. "This isn't my decision to make." Niall met his gaze, something like gratitude flickering in her eyes before she addressed Harrison. "My father will not come to army fort. Not trust soldiers." "What about here?" Harrison suggested. "Thornton Ranch is private property. The army would have no jurisdiction. You want to bring Chief Nantan, a man the army considers a hostile enemy, to my ranch for peace talks?" James raised an eyebrow. "That's asking a lot, Judge." "It is," Harrison acknowledged. "But consider the alternative, a prolonged, bloody campaign, innocent lives lost on both sides. And for what? So the army can claim another victory and force more people onto reservations where conditions are deplorable." James couldn't argue with that assessment. He had seen the reservations, had heard stories of starvation, disease and corruption that plagued them. "Even if I agreed," he said slowly, "how would we contact Chief Nantan? I can't imagine he's easy to find." Niall had been silent, her gaze distant as if weighing impossible choices. Now she looked up. "I can find him. If—" She hesitated. "If you will go with me." The request surprised James. "You want me to accompany you?" She nodded. "My father will not listen to me alone, but important white man with many cattle, much land." She made a gesture that encompassed the ranch. "He might listen, especially to man who saved his daughter." Judge Harrison leaned forward eagerly. "That could work. Chief Nantan is known to respect courage and honor, even in his enemies. And having you there, Thornton, might help convince him of our sincerity." James felt the weight of what they were proposing. Riding into Apache territory would be dangerous enough, but facing Chief Nantan, a warrior known for his fierce protection of his people and lands, was another matter entirely. "When would we leave?" he asked finally. "Tomorrow," Niall said decisively. "Army comes in 1 week. We must move quickly." Harrison looked pleased but cautious. "I'll send word to the governor and Colonel Andrews that negotiations are being arranged. That should buy some time." He rose from the table. "I'll return to Tucson today and await word of your progress." After seeing the judge off, James found Niall standing on the back porch, her gaze fixed on the distant mountains where her people made their camp. "You don't have to do this," he said, joining her. "It's not your responsibility to solve a conflict that's been brewing for decades." Niall turned to him, her face solemn. "My people die either way. On reservation with sickness, no food, or fighting bullets in chest." She shook her head. "Must be another way. And if your father refuses to see it, if he rejects any compromise—" "Then I tried," she said simply. "Can live with that. Cannot live watching from far while my family dies." James nodded, understanding. He had built his ranch, his fortune, by taking risks when necessary, but always calculated ones. This was different. This was stepping into a conflict with no guarantee of success and considerable danger. Yet looking at Niall, her quiet strength, her clear-eyed determination to forge a path between two hostile worlds, he found himself unwilling to let her face this alone. "We'll leave at first light," he decided. "We'll take Miguel and Tom with us part way, but the final approach should be just the two of us. Less threatening that way." Relief softened Niall's features. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," James replied wryly. "Your father might decide to kill me on sight." The hint of a smile touched her lips. "Maybe, but I think he will see what I see." "And what's that?" James asked, genuinely curious. Niall's eyes met his, dark and knowing. A man with honor, not common in any world. The simple statement affected James more than flowery praise ever could. For 15 years, he had lived by a code that prioritized fairness and integrity, even when it wasn't profitable or popular. That an Apache woman, raised to view white men with justified suspicion, could recognize that quality in him felt like a validation he hadn't realized he needed. As Niall turned to go inside, James remained on the porch, gazing toward the mountains that held both promise and peril. Tomorrow they would ride into uncertainty together, carrying with them the fragile possibility of peace. Dawn had barely broken when James and Niall set out, accompanied by Miguel and Tom as planned. They rode east toward the Dragoon Mountains, a rugged range where Apache bands had long found refuge in the labyrinthine canyons and hidden valleys. James had packed provisions for several days, unsure how long it would take to locate Chief Nantan's camp. Niall rode with surprising skill, sitting a horse as comfortably as any ranch hand. She had changed from Catherine's old dresses into more practical attire, a split riding skirt Maria had hastily altered, a simple blouse, and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her from the relentless sun. At her insistence, James had provided her with a knife, which she wore strapped to her belt. They made good time through the morning, following game trails and old Apache paths that Niall seemed to recognize instinctively. Around midday, they stopped in the shade of a rocky outcropping to rest the horses and eat a simple meal of jerky, hardtack, and dried fruit. "How much further?" Miguel asked, his weathered face creased with concern as he scanned the horizon. "We reach mountains by sunset," Niall replied, taking a small sip from her canteen. "Tomorrow, we find my father's scouts." Miguel exchanged a worried glance with Tom. "Mr. Thornton, perhaps we should reconsider. The army won't be moving for several days," James finished. "Judge Harrison will see to that. And we need to make contact before they do." Tom shifted uncomfortably. "But sir, if something happens to you, then you'll be a wealthy man, Tom," James said with a hint of dark humor. "You're in my will, remember. You'd get the north pasture." "That's not funny, sir," Tom muttered, though a reluctant smile tugged at his lips. As they prepared to continue their journey, Niall approached James privately. "Your men worry for you. They care." James nodded, adjusting his horse's saddle. "They're good men, loyal. Like family," she observed. "The closest thing I have to it," James admitted. Niall seemed to consider this. "My people say a man is wealthy not by cattle or land, but by those who would stand with him in battle." "Then I suppose I'm wealthy indeed," James replied, touched by the insight. They rode on through the afternoon, the landscape gradually changing from open grasslands to more broken, rocky terrain. The heat was oppressive, the sun beating down mercilessly from a cloudless sky. By late afternoon, they had reached the foothills of the Dragoons, where the vegetation grew more dense, mesquite, scrub oak, and occasionally juniper dotting the slopes. It was here, as the sun began its descent behind the western peaks, that Niall suggested Miguel and Tom should turn back. "From here, too dangerous for many riders," she explained. "Apache scouts watch these hills. See to, maybe not shoot." C4. She made a gesture that needed no translation. Though reluctant, Miguel recognized the wisdom in her words. "We'll make camp at Dixon's Creek," he told James. "That's about 4 hours. Ride back. We'll wait there 3 days. If you don't return by then, I'll return," James said with more confidence than he felt. Just make sure the ranch keeps running smoothly." After Miguel and Tom had departed, James and Niall continued on, climbing higher into the mountains as shadows lengthened across the slopes. The silence between them was companionable rather than strained, broken occasionally by Niall pointing out landmarks or signs of wildlife that James, for all his years in the territory, would have missed. As twilight descended, Niall led them to a small hidden canyon where a spring bubbled from the rocks, creating a tiny oasis of greenery. "We camp here," she said. "Water, shelter, safe." They made a small, smokeless fire and prepared a simple meal. James found himself studying Niall in the flickering light, the way she moved with quiet efficiency, the thoughtful set of her features as she gazed into the flames. "You're different here," he observed. "More at ease." Niall glanced up at him. "This is Apache land. I know every rock, every trail." She gestured to the surrounding canyon. "I played here as child, learned to hunt, to track." "Yet you left it," James said quietly. "That couldn't have been easy." She was silent for a long moment, poking at the fire with a stick. "My father," she began, then paused, searching for words. "After my mother died, he became harder. Colder. War chief first, father second." Her voice grew distant, tinged with old pain. "When I was 16, bluecoats attacked our camp. Many died. My younger brother, Taza, he was killed." "I'm sorry," James said softly. Niall nodded, accepting his sympathy. "After, my father changed more, saw only revenge, only fighting. I tried to show other way, trading with peaceful settlers, learning English, finding path between worlds." Her expression hardened slightly. "He called me traitor, said I forget who I am." "And what did you say to that?" James asked. "That I remember who we were before war came." Her eyes reflected the firelight, bright with conviction. "Apache lived here many generations. We adapted, survived. Why not adapt again? Why choose death when life possible?" James considered her words, impressed by her wisdom and courage. "That's why you were in Tucson, trying to find that path between worlds?" "Yes. I trade Apache crafts for things we need, medicine, tools. Show that not all white people enemies." She sighed. "Then Whitaker." "Some people won't change," James said. "They need their hatred, their fear. It gives them purpose. Like my father," Niall said softly, the parallel clearly painful for her. They fell silent again, each lost in thought as the night deepened around them. Eventually, Niall spoke again. "Why you never marry again, after Catherine?" The personal question caught James off guard, but something about the night, the isolation, and their shared vulnerability made him answer honestly. "I never found anyone who..." "Made sense," he said finally. "The ranch consumed me. Building something lasting became my purpose, and the years passed." He poked at the dying embers. "What about you? No husband waiting among your people?" A sad smile touched her lips. "There was someone, Kimi, son of my father's friend. Brave warrior, kind heart." She looked away. "He died 2 winters ago." "Soldiers from Fort Bowie." "I'm sorry," James said again, feeling the inadequacy of the words. "Life continues," Niall replied simply. "We sleep now. Tomorrow difficult." They took turns keeping watch through the night, though James suspected Niall slept little. He certainly didn't, his mind too full of their conversation, of the woman who had shown such strength and vision in the face of impossible choices. At first light, they continued their journey, climbing higher into the mountains. The terrain grew increasingly difficult, forcing them to dismount and lead their horses through narrow passes and over rocky slopes. Niall moved with the silent grace of one born to this wilderness, while James followed her lead, acutely aware that they were entering territory few white men had seen and lived to describe. By midday, Niall's demeanor had changed. She became more alert, more cautious, scanning the ridgelines and stopping occasionally to study signs invisible to James's eyes. "We are watched," she said quietly, as they paused in the shadow of a towering rock formation. James felt the hair on the back of his neck rise. "Your father's scouts," she nodded. "They follow since morning, deciding if we threat. What do we do? Continue." "Show we come in peace." She removed her hat, letting the sun glint off her long black braid, a clear signal of her identity. "They recognize me soon." They pressed on, the sense of being observed growing stronger with each passing hour. James kept his hand away from his revolver, conscious that any threatening gesture could be their last. As they rounded a bend in the narrow trail, Niall suddenly stopped, her body tense. James followed her gaze to a rocky ledge about 50 yards ahead, where 3 Apache warriors had materialized as if from the stone itself. They were painted for war, each carrying a rifle pointed directly at the intruders. Niall raised her hand in greeting and called out in Apache, her voice clear and strong. One of the warriors responded, his tone sharp, questioning. "What's happening?" James asked quietly. "They ask why I bring white man to sacred mountains," Niall replied without turning. "I tell them we come to speak with Nantan. Matter of life. Death for all Apache." More words were exchanged, the tension palpable in the air. Finally, the lead warrior made a gesture, and all 3 lowered their weapons slightly. "They will take us to camp," Niall said, relief evident in her voice. "But you must leave weapons here." Sign of trust. James hesitated only briefly before unbuckling his gun belt and placing it, along with his rifle, beside a distinctive boulder where he could retrieve them later, assuming he lived that long. As they were led deeper into the mountains, James realized they were entering a hidden valley, invisible from below. The path wound through a narrow defile before opening into a secluded basin where dozens of wickiups, traditional Apache shelters, stood among the trees. Women paused in their work to stare at the newcomers, children were hurriedly ushered inside, and warriors gathered with weapons ready. And there, standing before the largest wickiup, waited a man whose very posture radiated authority and power. Chief Nantan was tall for an Apache, his face deeply lined by age and hardship, his long hair streaked with gray and adorned with eagle feathers. He wore a mixture of traditional garments and items clearly taken from soldiers, a cavalry officer's jacket over buckskin leggings, a silver concho belt, and moccasins decorated with intricate beadwork. His expression as he gazed upon his daughter and the white man she had brought into his sanctuary was utterly unreadable. But in his eyes, James saw something that chilled him to the bone, a cold, calculating intelligence that would weigh their lives against the welfare of his people without hesitation or remorse. For several heartbeats, no one moved. The entire camp seemed frozen in a tableau of suspicion and tension. James remained perfectly still, aware that dozens of eyes watched his every breath, that any sudden movement might be his last. Beside him, Niall stood straight and proud, though he could sense her apprehension. Chief Nantan spoke first, his voice deep and measured. The Apache words incomprehensible to James but clearly weighted with authority. Niall answered, her tone respectful but firm. The exchange continued for several minutes, becoming increasingly heated until Nantan raised his hand sharply, silencing his daughter. Then, to James's surprise, the chief addressed him directly in heavily accented but understandable English. "Why you come to Apache land, white man? You have death wish." James met the chief's penetrating gaze. "I come with respect, Chief Nantan, and with news that concerns the future of your people. My daughter bring you. Why? Because I saved her life in Tucson when others would have taken it unjustly," James replied evenly, "and because I believe there may be a way to avoid more bloodshed on both sides." A murmur ran through the gathered Apache. Nantan's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Neol says you are man of honor, that you treat her with respect." The chief's gaze was evaluating, calculating. Strange thing for white man to risk life for Apache woman. "I didn't see an Apache woman," James said. "I saw injustice. I would have done the same for anyone." This seemed to give Nantan pause. He studied James for a long moment before making a curt gesture toward a nearby wiki-up. "Come, we talk inside." "Not for all ears." Neol touched James's arm lightly, a warning or encouragement, he wasn't sure which, before they followed Nantan into the dwelling. Inside, a small fire burned in a central pit, the smoke rising through an opening in the top. Furs and woven blankets lined the perimeter, and various weapons and sacred objects hung from the framework. The chief gestured for them to sit across the fire from him. Two older men joined them, tribal elders, James guessed from their bearing, and the deference Nantan showed them. Once all were seated, a woman entered silently, placing a clay pot of water near the fire before withdrawing without a word. "Now," Nantan said, his face illuminated by the flickering flames, "you tell me why white cattleman and rebellious daughter come to disturb my camp." James glanced at Neol, who nodded encouragingly. He took a deep breath and began. "The U.S. Army at Fort Bowie is preparing a campaign against your band. Colonel Andrews has orders to bring all remaining free Apache to San Carlos Reservation by force if necessary." He paused, letting the information sink in. "They plan to move within days." One of the elders muttered something in Apache. Nantan's face hardened, but he showed no surprise. "This is not news," he said flatly. "Bluecoats always hunt Apache. We fight, we survive, or we die free." "There may be another option," James continued. "The territorial judge and governor are willing to arrange negotiations, not at a fort or military outpost, but on neutral ground, my ranch. They're prepared to discuss terms that might be more favorable than what's typically offered." Nantan laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "More favorable? You mean smaller cage? Better chains? Apache not meant for reservation, not meant to beg for food, die of white man's diseases." "Father," Neol interjected in English, clearly wanting James to understand, "our people suffer. Children hungry, elders sick. How long can we run? How many more must die?" "Better to die with honor than live without it," Nantan replied sharply. "There is honor in survival," Neol countered. "Aye, in ensuring our ways, our stories, our children continue." The chief's expression darkened. "You speak of surrender as always." "I speak of adaptation," she said firmly, "as our people have done for generations." The tension between father and daughter was palpable. James remained silent, sensing this was a continuation of a long-standing argument. One of the elders spoke at length in Apache, his gnarled hands gesturing emphatically. Nantan listened with respect before turning back to James. "Sees Far asks why we should trust any white man's word, all treaties broken, all promises forgotten when gold or land discovered." It was a fair question, one James had anticipated. "I can't speak for broken promises in the past. I can only offer what's possible now. Judge Harrison is a man of integrity. The governor wants peace, not more costly conflicts." And he paused, choosing his words carefully. I offer my ranch as neutral ground, my word that you and your people will be safe there during negotiations. Your word, Nantan repeated, studying him intently. Why would Apache chief value word of cattle rancher? James met his gaze steadily. Because I could have let your daughter hang in Tucson. I could have turned her over to Whitaker's mob when they came to my ranch. I could have alerted the army to your location instead of coming here myself. He leaned forward slightly. I've done none of those things because I believe in justice. And what's happening to your people isn't just... A heavy silence fell over the wickiup. The second elder, who had remained quiet until now, spoke softly to Nantan. The chief nodded thoughtfully. Nightwalker is oldest of our band, Nantan explained. He remembers time before white men came in numbers. He says old ways tell us to judge man by actions, not words. The chief's eyes remained fixed on James. Your actions speak, but question remains. Why you care what happens to Apache? What is your stake in this? It was the question James had been asking himself since he first intervened at the gallows. The honest answer came to him with sudden clarity. 15 years ago, I lost my wife. Since then, I've built a cattle empire, acquired land, gained respect and influence, but none of it matters if I stand by while people are driven from their homes, while children are orphaned and elders die before their time. He glanced at Neol before continuing. Your daughter showed me there's another path possible, one that doesn't end in more graves. Nantan's expression remained inscrutable, but something shifted in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of shared understanding despite the chasm between their worlds. You have wife now? The chief asked unexpectedly. James blinked at the sudden change of subject. No, Catherine died 15 years ago. There's been no one else. Nantan nodded, as if this confirmed something important. And children? None, James replied, wondering at the purpose of these questions. The chief exchanged glances with the elders before speaking again. Man with no family, only land and cattle. This is empty life. Yes, maybe you seek meaning. Maybe you use Apache problem to fill empty heart. The assessment was uncomfortably perceptive. James felt exposed, as if Nantan had seen through to the loneliness that his wealth and reputation had never quite masked. Maybe, he acknowledged. But does that make what I'm offering less valuable? A hint of respect flickered across Nantan's face. Honest answer, rare from white man. He fell silent, considering, then turned to Neol. You trust this man with lives of our people? Yes, she said without hesitation. He is different. He sees with clear eyes. Nantan studied his daughter for a long moment. You were always stubborn, like your mother. There was gruff affection beneath the criticism, always believing people can change. Some can, Neol said softly. Some do. The chief looked back to James. I not decide tonight, must consult with warriors, with spirits. You stay in camp. We talk more tomorrow. James recognized it wasn't a request, but a command, and also that he was effectively a hostage until Nantan reached his decision. Still, it was better than outright rejection. Thank you for hearing me out, he said with a respectful nod. Nantan rose, signaling the end of the meeting. Neol will show you where to sleep. Do not wander camp alone. Some young men have hot blood, quick anger against white faces. As they exited the wickiup, the camp had grown darker, lit only by scattered cook fires. Curious eyes followed them as Neol led James to a small shelter at the edge of the encampment. You did well, she said quietly. My father respects directness, honesty. Will he agree? James asked. Neol's expression was troubled. I don't know. He fears trap. Many Apache leaders invited to peace talks never returned. This would be different, James insisted. I know. She touched his arm lightly. But history speaks louder than promises. She gestured to the small wickiup. You sleep here. I stay with my father's sister. We'll bring food soon. Left alone, James sat at the entrance of the shelter, watching the activity in the camp. Children peeked at him from behind their mothers' skirts. Warriors passed by, some glaring openly, others merely curious. He was a curiosity, an anomaly, a white man who had walked willingly into their stronghold, bearing words instead of weapons. As night fell completely over the hidden valley, James felt the weight of his isolation. He was utterly alone here, surrounded by a people who had every reason to mistrust him, dependent on the word of a chief who saw him as an enemy, and the faith of a woman who had already risked everything by bringing him here. And yet, watching the Apache families moving about their camp, the quiet dignity of their lives despite years of persecution, he knew he was exactly where he needed to be. Dawn broke over the Apache camp with a pearl-gray light that gradually warmed to gold. James woke to unfamiliar sounds, women's voices as they began the day's work, children's laughter, the rhythmic thud of someone chopping wood. He had slept fitfully on the bed of furs Neol had provided, his dreams troubled by images of soldiers and gallows. Emerging from the wickiup, he found the camp already fully alive with activity. An old woman nearby watched him warily as she ground corn between stones. Children stopped their play to stare openly, whispering to each other in Apache. A group of young warriors passed by, their expressions hostile, hands resting meaningfully on knives or rifles. They wonder if you sleep well on Apache ground, came Neol's voice behind him. She approached carrying a wooden bowl of what looked like corn porridge and a water skin. Or if spirits of those killed by white men haunt your dreams. Not spirits, James replied, accepting the food gratefully. Just an old man's worries. Neol's lips curved slightly. 48 is not old for white man. How did you know my age? James asked, surprised. Maria told me, she said. She says you work too hard for man with so many years, too many responsibilities. She gestured toward the camp. My father consults with elders still. We'll take time. You may walk with me if you wish. See how Apache live. The invitation seemed significant, and James recognized it as an opportunity to better understand the people he was trying to help. And I'd like that. As they walked through the camp, Neol explained the daily activities: women preparing food, tanning hides, weaving baskets, men crafting weapons, repairing tools, or preparing for hunting parties. Despite the constant displacement forced upon them by the army, they maintained a structured society with clear roles and deep traditions. And this wickiup, Neol said, indicating a shelter adorned with symbolic paintings, is where medicine man works, heals sick, speaks to spirits. She lowered her voice respectfully. Very sacred place. They passed women teaching young girls to grind mesquite beans into flour, showing a patience and care that reminded James of the way his mother had taught his sisters household skills long ago. Your people carry their knowledge with them, James observed. Their traditions aren't tied to one place. Neol nodded, pleased by his understanding. Apache ways live in hearts, in memories, in stories. Land can be taken, spirit cannot. As they continued their tour, they approached a clearing where several boys practiced with small bows. An older man supervised, offering guidance in Apache that needed no translation, the universal language of instruction transcending words. One boy, no more than 10 years old, was struggling, his arrows consistently falling short of the target. The frustration on his face was evident as the other boys snickered at his efforts. James paused, watching. Without thinking, he approached the boy, kneeling beside him. The old instructor tensed, as did several nearby warriors, but Neol said something in Apache that seemed to reassure them. "May I?" James asked the boy, gesturing to the bow. The child looked to the instructor, who gave a reluctant nod. James took the bow, examining it carefully before making a small adjustment to the way the string was notched. He demonstrated a stance, drawing the bow fully before releasing the arrow, which struck near the center of the target. Then he handed the bow back to the boy, guiding him gently into the proper position, showing how to breathe and release. The boy's next shot flew true, striking the target with a solid thunk. His face lit up with a smile that needed no translation. The old instructor approached, examining the bow with new interest, then spoke to James through Neol. "He asks where you learned to shoot bow," she translated. "My grandfather taught me as a boy," James replied. "He traded with the Cherokee back east, learned from them." When Neol translated this, the old man's expression softened slightly. He spoke again, at greater length. He says, "Bow is voice of hunter. Must be in harmony with the man who carries it. You understand this. Have respect for old ways." It was a small moment, but James felt something shift in the atmosphere around them. The suspicious glances became more curious than hostile. By participating in the teaching of a child, one of the most sacred duties in any culture, he had shown himself to be more than just an intruder. As they continued their walk, Neol explained more about Apache life, their beliefs about the natural world, their complex kinship systems, their ways of resolving disputes. James listened attentively, recognizing that he was being granted rare insight into a culture most white men encountered only across rifle sights. "Your father," James said as they paused near the edge of the camp. "He's a great leader, isn't he? His people respect him deeply." Neol's expression grew complex. "He is last of the great war chiefs, carries weight of all Apache hopes, all Apache pride." She looked toward the mountains. "Heavy burden, makes heart hard sometimes." "Like with you?" James asked gently. She nodded. "He sees my ways as weakness, thinks I surrender when I seek new path." Her gaze returned to James, unexpectedly vulnerable. "You understand why I left? Why I had to find different future?" "I do," James said. "It takes more courage sometimes to seek peace than to wage war." She studied him for a long moment. "When I first saw you in Tucson, standing against your own people for justice, I thought maybe I find ally, maybe not all white men blind to truth." A small smile touched her lips. "I was right." The simple statement carried a weight that affected James deeply. Before he could respond, shouts erupted from the far side of the camp. Warriors ran toward the source of the commotion, weapons ready. "What's happening?" James asked as Neol tensed beside him. "Come," she said urgently, leading him toward the disturbance. They found a group of warriors surrounding 3 men, 2 Apache scouts, and between them, a battered and bloodied white man in the tattered remains of a cavalry uniform. The prisoner's hands were bound, his face barely recognizable beneath dirt and blood. Chief Nantan stood before him, his expression thunderous. "Scout from Fort Bowie," Neol explained in a hushed voice. "Captured watching our camp." The soldier looked half dead from exhaustion and rough treatment. As James watched, one of the warriors struck him hard across the face, sending him sprawling in the dust. "What will they do to him?" James asked, though he feared he already knew the answer. "Information first," Neol said grimly. "Then death. Spy deserves no mercy." Nantan was questioning the man in broken English, demanding to know how many soldiers were nearby when their attack would come. The scout remained stubbornly silent, even as another blow landed. James stepped forward before he could reconsider. Chief Nantan. All eyes turned to him, some surprised, others angry at his interference. Nantan's gaze was particularly forbidding. "This, not your concern, white man," the chief said coldly. "With respect," James continued, "it is. If this man was scouting your position, it means the army is moving sooner than we thought. Killing him won't change that, but he might have information that could help us prevent bloodshed. He is enemy," Nantan stated flatly, "deserves warrior's death. And if 20 more scouts replace him, if they report back that you've killed a US soldier, any chance of peaceful negotiation would die with him." A tense silence fell over the gathering. The captured scout stared at James with bewildered hope, clearly unable to comprehend why a white man would be among the Apache, much less speaking on his behalf. Neol stepped forward to stand beside James. "Father, think. If we bring this man to Thornton Ranch alive, show good faith, show different path." Nantan's eyes narrowed, shifting between his daughter and James. "You ask much, daughter. Ask me to appear weak before my warriors." "Not weak," James countered. "Wise, strategic." One of the younger warriors shouted something in Apache, clearly objecting. Others joined in, the mood growing dangerous as factions formed. Some supporting their chief's traditional right to execute an enemy spy, others considering the wisdom in James's words. Nantan raised his hand for silence, his authority immediately respected despite the tension. He approached James, stopping just inches away, his dark eyes boring into the ranchers. "You stand in Apache camp. Tell Apache chief how to treat enemy," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You have courage, or no sense. Maybe both," James replied steadily. "But I didn't come this far to watch more killing poison any chance for peace." For several heartbeats, Nantan said nothing. The two men locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, unexpectedly, the chief smiled, a hard, calculating expression that held neither warmth nor humor. "You play dangerous game, Thornton, but maybe useful game." He turned to his warriors and spoke rapidly in Apache. Though James couldn't understand the words, the tone was clear. A decision had been made, and it would be obeyed, however reluctantly. Two warriors roughly hauled the scout to his feet. Nantan addressed him directly. "You live today. Not because Apache weak, because Apache wise." He gestured toward James. "This man speak for you. Your life in his hands now. Remember this." The scout nodded weakly, shock and relief evident on his battered face. Nantan turned back to James. "We leave for your ranch tomorrow at dawn. Take 20 warriors, this prisoner, discuss terms with your judge, your governor." His expression hardened again. "But know this, any sign of trap, any broken promise, and neither you nor any white man in territory will be safe." It was both agreement and threat, acceptance and warning. James nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility that now rested on his shoulders. "Thank you, Chief Nantan. You won't regret this decision." "That remains to be seen," the chief replied grimly. He gestured to the assembled warriors. "Prepare for journey. Select horses, weapons, provisions." With a final measuring look at James, he turned and walked away, his bearing regal despite the concession he had just made. As the crowd dispersed, Neol touched James's arm lightly. "You took great risk. Few challenge my father so directly." "It seemed necessary," James said, still processing what had just happened. "Will he truly honor this agreement?" "My father's word is sacred to him," Neol replied. "He will come. He will listen." She smiled slightly. "Whether he agrees is another matter." James glanced at the cavalry scout, who was being led away, still a prisoner, but no longer facing immediate execution. And the soldier? Safe, for now. Her expression grew serious. But his presence changes things. Army knows where we are. We must move quickly. That night, as the camp prepared for the journey ahead, James sat outside his wickiup, watching the activity around him. The atmosphere had shifted subtly, still wary, but with a current of anticipation rather than hostility. Some of the Apache clearly hoped for a genuine chance at peace. Others were merely humoring their chief while preparing for inevitable battle. Niol joined him, offering a cup of something hot and fragrant. "And the tea," she explained, "helps for journey." They sat in companionable silence, sipping the herbal brew as the stars emerged above the mountains. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new challenges, as they attempted to bridge worlds that had been in conflict for generations. "Are you afraid?" James asked quietly. Niol considered the question seriously. "Yes," she admitted. "For my father, for my people, for—" She hesitated. "And for what grows between us." The simple acknowledgement of their deepening connection hung in the air between them, neither denied nor elaborated upon. Some truths were too fragile, too complicated to be examined directly. "Whatever happens," James said finally, "I'm glad you found me in Tucson." Niol's hand found his in the darkness, a brief warm pressure that spoke more than words could express. "As am I." Above them, the night sky wheeled slowly over the mountains, stars bearing witness to an unlikely alliance, and perhaps something more, born of courage, respect, and the shared hope for a better future. The journey from the Apache stronghold to Thornton Ranch was fraught with tension. Chief Nantan had selected 20 of his finest warriors, men whose fierce expressions and battle scars told stories of countless conflicts with white settlers and soldiers. They rode in formation around James, Niol, and the battered cavalry scout, whose hands remained bound, but who had been given water and food enough to keep him on his horse. James led the way, acutely aware of the trust Nantan had placed in him, and the deadly consequences should the trust prove misplaced. They traveled swiftly but cautiously, avoiding main trails and settlements, keeping to the cover of arroyos and wooded areas when possible. By mid-afternoon of the first day, they reached Dixon's Creek, where Miguel and Tom waited anxiously. The two ranch hands' expressions upon seeing James ride in with nearly 24 armed Apache warriors was a mixture of relief, shock, and trepidation. "Mr. Thornton," Miguel said, his hand instinctively moving toward his gun before James shook his head slightly in warning. "We weren't sure you'd be coming back." "As promised," James replied. "Miguel, Tom, this is Chief Nantan. He's agreed to peace talks at the ranch." The ranch hands nodded respectfully, though their unease was evident. Chief Nantan regarded them with the calculated assessment of a man who had survived countless battles by reading his enemies' intentions correctly. "Your men loyal," he observed to James. "Good warriors." "The best," James agreed. "They'll ride ahead to prepare the ranch for our arrival and alert Judge Harrison." Nantan nodded his approval, and Miguel and Tom mounted up, clearly relieved to be given a reason to distance themselves from the Apache band. Before they departed, James pulled Miguel aside. "Make sure the bunkhouse is cleared for our guests," he instructed quietly, "and tell Maria to prepare food, enough for 30. These men must be treated with respect, Miguel." "Everything depends on it." "Si, Patron," Miguel replied gravely. "And the army, should we send word to Fort Bowie?" James glanced at the captive scout. "Not yet. Judge Harrison first. Let him handle the military." He lowered his voice further. "And Miguel, make sure everyone understands. Any provocation, any disrespect toward our Apache guests will not be tolerated. With a nod, Miguel and Tom rode off at a gallop, eager to reach the ranch well ahead of the main party. They made camp that night in a sheltered valley. The Apache warriors maintained a respectful distance from James, though their vigilance never wavered. Nantan sat with his most trusted advisors, speaking in low tones, occasionally glancing toward James and Neol. "They debate whether this is wise," Neol explained as she and James sat near their small fire. "Some believe it is a trap, others think negotiations futile, that white men never honor their word." "Can you blame them?" James asked. Neol's expression softened. "No, but I told them about Judge Harrison, about Governor Burke's message. Some are willing to hope." She hesitated. "Unto my father most of all, though he would never admit it." "Why is that?" She looked into the fire, its light casting shadows across her face. "He is tired, James. Tired of running, of fighting, of burying his people. He sees end coming, one way or another." Her voice dropped. "He would rather find honorable peace than watch last of Apache die in battle." James studied Nantan across the camp, the proud bearing, the watchful eyes, the weight of responsibility evident in every line of his face. "He's a great man." "Yes," Neol agreed simply, "and a father who wishes different future for his daughter." She met James's gaze directly. "Though not perhaps the future I have begun to see." The implication hung between them, too dangerous to acknowledge openly, yet too powerful to deny. James reached out, briefly covering her hand with his, a gesture hidden from the others by the darkness, yet profoundly meaningful to them both. "One step at a time," he said quietly. "Peace first, then possibilities." They reached Thornton Ranch by mid-afternoon the following day. As they crested the final hill, James felt a surge of pride and anxiety at the sight of his home. The main house stood solid and welcoming, smoke rising from the chimney. The outbuildings and corrals were tidy and well-maintained. It was a testament to everything he had built over 15 years of hard work, and now it would serve as the stage for a meeting that might change the future of the entire territory. The Apache warriors tensed visibly as they approached, clearly expecting an ambush, despite the assurances they had been given. But the ranch appeared peaceful, with only a few figures visible. Miguel near the main house, several ranch hands going about their normal duties, giving the approaching party wary glances but making no threatening moves. As they rode into the yard, James spotted Judge Harrison standing on the porch, dressed formally in his black suit and string tie. Beside him stood Governor Edmund Burke himself, a surprise James hadn't anticipated. The territorial governor was a stocky man with a neatly trimmed beard and shrewd eyes, known for his pragmatic approach to the complex issues facing Arizona territory. James dismounted first, approaching the porch while signaling the Apache party to wait. "Judge Harrison, Governor Burke, thank you for coming." "Thornton," the governor acknowledged with a nod. "When Harrison told me what you were attempting, I could scarcely believe it." His eyes moved past James to the Apache warriors, lingering on Chief Nantan with open curiosity. Yet here we are. Chief Nantan has agreed to negotiations in good faith," James said. "He and his men will need accommodations, food, and the respect due to representatives of a sovereign people." Harrison nodded. "All arranged. The bunkhouse has been prepared, and your housekeeper assures me dinner will be ready by sundown." He hesitated. "There is, however, a complication." James felt a knot form in his stomach. "Oh, what kind of complication?" "Colonel Andrews arrived an hour ago," the governor said quietly, "with a small detachment of cavalry." James stiffened. "You invited the army? After all the assurances I gave Chief Nantan about neutral ground?" "We didn't invite him," Harrison clarified quickly. Apparently one of his scouting parties went missing. He tracked them to the edge of your property. The captured scout? Of course. James glanced back at the bound soldier, realizing the situation had just become exponentially more volatile. Where is the colonel now? In your study, the governor replied. He's demanding the release of his man and the surrender of the Apache band. I've managed to keep him contained for now, but he's not a patient man. James took a deep breath, mind racing. Tell him nothing until I've had a chance to speak with Chief Nantan. This situation requires delicate handling. He returned to the Apache party, where Neol had already translated the exchange for her father. Nantan's expression had darkened considerably. "Blue coat colonel here," the chief said, his voice dangerously soft. "You promised neutral ground, Thornton. Now army waits inside." "I didn't know," James said, honestly. "He came because of the scout, but this doesn't change anything. My ranch remains neutral territory. The colonel has no authority here unless I grant it." Nantan's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words, but army brings guns, not words." "Father," Neol interjected, "let James speak with this colonel. We hold the scout. We have, what is word, leverage." The chief considered this, then gave a curt nod. "We wait here, you go. But know this, first sign of treachery, and we fight. Better to die in battle than surrender to lies." The weight of 20 lives, and potentially hundreds more, rested on James's shoulders as he walked toward the house. Before entering, he looked back at Neol, drawing strength from her calm, steady gaze. Inside, he found Colonel Andrews pacing his study like a caged predator. The officer was in his 50s, with a weathered face and hard eyes that had seen too many Indian campaigns. His uniform was dusty from the trail, but the insignia of his rank gleamed in the afternoon light. "Thornton," Andrews said without preamble, "you've got a lot of explaining to do. 20 armed hostiles on your property, one of my scouts held captive." "Colonel," James interrupted firmly, "this is my ranch, and those hostiles are here at my invitation for peace negotiations sanctioned by the governor and territorial judge." Andrews snorted. "Peace with Nantan? The man's a butcher. He's responsible for raids that have killed dozens of settlers." "And how many Apache have died at the hands of the army?" James countered. "This cycle of violence benefits no one. That's why Chief Nantan has agreed to talks. What I want to know," the governor interjected, "is how you managed to arrange this meeting when the army has been trying to locate Nantan's band for months." James chose his words carefully. "I had help from someone who knows both worlds, someone who believes peace is possible." He turned back to Andrews. "Colonel, I understand your concern for your scout. He's alive and will be released as a gesture of good faith, but only if you agree to participate in these negotiations without prejudice." Andrews's jaw tightened. "I have orders, Thornton, direct from the Department of War. All hostile Apache are to be contained on the reservation. Non-compliance is not an option." "Perhaps," the governor said thoughtfully, "those orders might be reinterpreted in light of changed circumstances. A peaceful resolution would certainly please the territorial legislature. Military campaigns are expensive, Colonel, and unpopular with voters back east." Politics. James could see Andrews weighing the implications. The colonel was ambitious. Rumor had it he sought a generalship, and a peaceful resolution to the Apache problem could be presented as a victory if framed correctly. "What exactly are you proposing?" Andrews asked finally. "A true negotiation," James replied. "Land rights, hunting privileges, autonomy within agreed boundaries, not the usual reservation terms." Andrews laughed bitterly. You're living in a dream world, Thornton. Washington won't approve. Washington is 3,000 miles away, the governor interrupted, and I have certain discretionary authorities regarding territorial management. If we can reach an agreement that satisfies all parties, I'm prepared to implement and defend it. The colonel fell silent, considering, and my scout, released unharmed once negotiations begin in good faith, James promised. After a long moment, Andrews nodded curtly. I'll hear them out, but I make no promises beyond that. James felt a surge of cautious hope. I'll inform Chief Nantan. We'll begin formal talks tomorrow morning, after everyone has rested. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Colonel. Your men will remain outside the main house during negotiations. Only you will represent the army. This is non-negotiable. Andrews bristled, but eventually agreed, recognizing the delicate balance required. Outside, the Apache warriors had dismounted but remained vigilant, positioned strategically around their chief. James approached Nantan and explained the situation in simple, direct terms. Colonel agrees to talks, he concluded. Governor supports new approach, true negotiation, not surrender. Nantan listened impassively, then conferred briefly with his advisors before responding. We stay, we listen. Scout remains bound until talks show good faith. He fixed James with a penetrating stare. You stake much on these talks, Thornton. Your word, your honor. I do, James acknowledged, because I believe it's possible to find a path that honors your people's rights and traditions while adapting to changing times. A hint of grudging respect showed in Nantan's eyes. We will see. For now, we rest. Tomorrow brings words. Or war. As the Apache warriors were shown to the bunkhouse, Neol lingered behind, falling into step beside James as he walked toward the main house. You have done what many thought impossible, she said quietly. Brought my father, a colonel, and the governor to same table. Getting them to the table is one thing, James replied. Finding terms they can all accept is another matter entirely. They paused on the porch, the setting sun casting long shadows across the ranch yard. In the golden light, Neol's face seemed to glow with an inner strength that took James's breath away. What happens after, she asked softly, if peace comes? It was the question that had haunted James since their journey began, the unspoken possibility that lay beneath their shared mission. He looked at her, allowing himself for the first time to imagine a future beyond the immediate crisis. I don't know, he admitted, but I know I don't want to return to the life I had before you. Neol's eyes softened, vulnerability showing beneath her composure. My path has always been alone, between worlds, belonging to neither. She hesitated. Perhaps there is another way. For both of us. Before James could respond, Maria appeared at the door, her expression a mixture of anxiety and determination as she regarded Neol. Senor Thornton, dinner is prepared. The governor and judge are waiting. She glanced uncertainly at Neol. Will the señorita be joining you? James looked at Neol questioningly. It would be unprecedented, an Apache woman dining with the territorial governor, a judge, and a military officer. Yet her presence might be essential to bridge the cultural divide that threatened to derail tomorrow's negotiations. Yes, Neol said before James could answer, I will join. She straightened her shoulders, every inch a chief's daughter despite her simple clothing. As representative of my people. Voice for those not at table. As they entered the house together, James knew that whatever happened tomorrow would forever change not just the territory, but their lives as well. The peace they sought between nations seemed both fragile and essential, much like the unspoken feelings growing between a cattleman and an Apache woman who had each risked everything to forge a new path forward. The dining room of Thornton Ranch had never hosted such an extraordinary gathering. James sat at the head of his table, a position that felt both natural and surreal given the assembled company. To his right sat Governor Burke and Judge Harrison. To his left, Neol, dignified and composed despite the palpable tension. Colonel Andrews sat opposite James, his military bearing rigid, his eyes constantly darting to the windows where the shapes of Apache warriors could occasionally be glimpsed moving about the yard. Maria served the meal with admirable composure, though her hands trembled slightly as she placed a plate before Neol. The conversation remained stiffly polite, focusing on neutral topics: the territory's growth, the cattle industry, the unusually mild weather. Yet beneath the civility ran currents of anxiety, suspicion, and in Andrew's case, barely concealed hostility. It was Neol who finally broke through the artificial calm, setting down her fork with deliberate precision. "You speak of many things," she said, her English careful but clear, "but not of why we are here, not of my people's future." A silence fell over the table. Governor Burke cleared his throat. "Indeed, Miss—" "Ah, Neol," she supplied, "daughter of Chief Nantan." "Miss Neol," the governor continued smoothly, "you're quite right. Perhaps we should discuss parameters for tomorrow's negotiations." Colonel Andrews snorted. "Parameters? Let's be clear about what's happening here. These Apache have two choices: surrender peacefully to reservation life or face military action. The only parameter is how many lives are lost in the process." James felt Neol tense beside him, but admired her restraint as she replied, "My father comes in good faith, seeks honorable solution, not surrender." "Your father," Andrew said coldly, "has raided settlements, attacked military patrols, and defied government orders for years. He's hardly in a position to dictate terms." "Colonel," James interjected sharply, "Chief Nantan is here at my invitation as a respected leader seeking peace. If you can't approach these negotiations with an open mind, perhaps you shouldn't participate at all." Andrew's face flushed. "You forget yourself, Thornton. I represent the United States Army. My authority ends at the boundaries of my property," James finished firmly. "This is private land, Colonel. You're here because I allow it, not by right." The governor raised his hand placatingly. "Gentlemen, please, we all want the same thing, a peaceful resolution to a conflict that has cost too many lives on both sides." He turned to Neol with unexpected respect. "What does your father hope to achieve through these talks, Miss Neol?" She considered her words carefully. "Land where Apache can live free. Hunter, gather, raise children in our ways. No soldiers watching, no agents controlling food, medicine." Her eyes met each of theirs in turn. "Dignity, future for our children." "Impossible," Andrews declared. "The reservation system is established policy. Policies can be adapted," Judge Harrison observed mildly. "The governor has certain discretionary powers regarding territorial lands. What Judge Harrison suggests," Governor Burke elaborated, "is the possibility of establishing a protected territory. Not a reservation in the traditional sense, but land set aside where Chief Nantan's people could maintain significant autonomy while still acknowledging territorial authority." Andrews leaned forward incredulously. "You can't be serious." "Washington would never approve such an arrangement." "Washington? the governor replied dryly, is primarily concerned with peace at minimal expense. Military campaigns are costly, Colonel, in dollars, lives, and political capital. If we can achieve a lasting peace through negotiation rather than force, I believe the federal government would be flexible. The discussion continued late into the evening, growing more substantive as preliminary terms were debated. James watched Niall navigate the complex political discourse with remarkable skill, explaining Apache perspectives while listening attentively to the officials' concerns. Her presence transformed the tenor of the conversation, making abstract policy discussions personal and immediate. When they finally retired for the night, James walked Niall to the East Wing room that had become hers. "You were magnificent tonight," he said quietly. "You made them see your people as human beings, not just as a problem to be solved." "Tomorrow will be harder," she replied, her expression serious. "My father does not bend easily, neither does your colonel." "They're not my anything," James corrected gently. "And except perhaps my responsibility as host of these talks." Niall studied him in the dim hallway light. "You take much on your shoulders, James Thornton." "So do you," he countered. A small smile touched her lips. But perhaps that is why we understand each other." She hesitated, then added softly, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I am grateful our paths crossed." James wanted to say more, so much more, but the timing felt wrong, the future too uncertain. Instead, he simply nodded. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be a long day for all of us." Dawn broke clear and bright over Thornton Ranch, the sky a perfect azure that belied the tensions gathering below. The main house's parlor had been transformed into an impromptu council chamber, with chairs arranged in a rough circle rather than across a table, a subtle suggestion of equality that James hoped would set the right tone. Chief Nantan arrived with 4 of his most trusted warriors, all wearing their finest ceremonial attire. The chief himself cut an imposing figure in a beautifully beaded buckskin shirt, his long hair adorned with eagle feathers, a silver concho belt at his waist. He carried himself with the dignity of a man who represented not just himself, but generations of his people. Colonel Andrews appeared in full dress uniform, the brass buttons and gold braid a stark contrast to the Apache's natural ornaments. Governor Burke and Judge Harrison, dressed formally but simply, as befit their civil positions. James and Niall stood together as the participants assembled, their presence bridging the divide between the two worlds represented in the room. "Before we begin," James announced, "I want to make something clear. This is neutral ground. All who speak here will be heard with respect. All proposals considered in good faith." He looked around the circle, meeting each person's gaze. "We have an opportunity today to end a conflict that has caused immeasurable suffering. I ask each of you to approach these talks with an open mind and a willingness to compromise." The negotiations began tentatively, with Chief Nantan speaking through Niall, who translated his Apache into English. The chief's opening statement was powerful, a recounting of broken promises, of lands taken, of his people's suffering. Yet it ended not with recrimination, but with a vision of possible coexistence. "My father says," Niall translated, her voice steady, "that Apache way is to adapt, to survive. We have lived through many changes. Can live through more, if given space to breathe, to be Apache still." Colonel Andrews spoke next, his initial statements rigid and unyielding, recitations of policy, assertions of federal authority, reminders of past conflicts. Yet as the hours passed, something shifted. Perhaps it was the dignified presence of Nantan, or the governor's political pragmatism, or simply the human reality of facing those one had previously viewed only as enemies. By midday, the outlines of a possible agreement began to emerge. A territory within the Dragoon Mountains would be designated for Nantan's band, not a reservation but a protected homeland where they would maintain significant autonomy. In return, the Apache would cease all raids and acknowledge territorial authority. Trade would be permitted, movement restricted, but not prohibited entirely. Each point was debated intensely, each word examined for hidden meanings or future complications. Tempers flared occasionally, voices raised, but James and Neol worked together to maintain the fragile dialogue, to find common ground when positions seemed irreconcilable. The captured scout was brought in, as promised, and formally released to Colonel Andrews, a gesture of good faith that seemed to soften some of the military man's resistance. As afternoon waned toward evening, Governor Burke produced a document, a preliminary agreement outlining the terms they had discussed. It would require formal ratification, official signatures, proper legal language, but it represented something profound: recognition of the Apache's right to exist as a people, to maintain their identity and traditions while adapting to the inevitable changes sweeping across the territory. But this is not perfect, the governor acknowledged as all reviewed the document. Both sides will find elements to criticize, but it is a beginning, a path toward peace rather than destruction. Chief Nantan studied the paper he could not read, then looked to his daughter. Neol translated each point carefully, ensuring her father understood fully what was being proposed. When she finished, the chief was silent for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he spoke, not to the officials, but to James. "You keep word," he said in his accented English. "Bring honest talk, not tricks." He glanced at his daughter, something softening briefly in his expression. "Neol was right about you, man of honor." James inclined his head respectfully. "Your willingness to seek peace shows equal honor, Chief Nantan." The chief turned to Governor Burke. "We accept this beginning, not end, but beginning." He made a gesture that encompassed everyone present. "All must keep word now. All must honor what is written." "The territory will honor its commitments," the governor assured him. Colonel Andrews' jaw worked as he struggled internally. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "The army will respect the terms so long as your people do the same." With those words, the impossible had been achieved, a foundation for peace where most had seen only the inevitability of war. As the meeting concluded, Nantan approached James privately, Neol at his side to translate. "My father says," she began, her voice softer than it had been during the negotiations, "that he has watched you closely these many days. Seen how you risk for justice, speak truth to power." She paused, something vulnerable crossing her face. "He says he understands now why I brought you to our camp, why I trust you." James waited, sensing there was more. "He asks," Neol continued, her eyes not quite meeting James's, "what is in your heart for his daughter?" The directness of the question took James aback. He looked from Nantan's penetrating gaze to Neol's carefully composed features, recognizing the weight of the moment. "Tell your father," he said slowly, choosing his words with care, "that I hold his daughter in the highest esteem, that her courage, her wisdom, and her vision have changed how I see the world." He took a breath. "And tell him that if she were willing, I would be honored to walk beside her on whatever path she chooses." As Neol translated, her voice trembled slightly. Nantan listened intently, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, he spoke again, at length. "My father says," Neol translated, her cheeks flushed, "that such a path would be difficult. Many on both sides would disapprove. But She hesitated. He says, I have always found my own way, even when it led away from his, that perhaps this is the path I was meant to walk, between worlds, building bridges where others see only walls. James felt his heart quicken. And what does his daughter say? For the first time since he had known her, Niol seemed at a loss for words. I need time, she said finally. This day brings much change. For my people, for me. James nodded, understanding. Of course. Nantan studied them both, then spoke once more. My father says, Niol translated, a small smile touching her lips, that you are patient man, Thornton. Good quality in rancher. Better quality in husband. With that provocative statement hanging in the air, the chief inclined his head respectfully and walked away to join his warriors, leaving James and Niol standing together in a moment of possibility neither had imagined when they first met at that Tucson gallows. Autumn painted the Arizona landscape in gold and amber as a wagon traveled the newly established trail between Thornton Ranch and the Apache-protected territory in the Dragoon Mountains. James held the reins loosely, enjoying the crisp air and the company of the woman beside him. 3 months had passed since the historic agreement. There had been challenges, of course, resistance from some settlers, skepticism from military officers, distrust among some of Nantan's warriors, but the foundation held, strengthened by regular meetings, fair trade, and honest communication. Maria sends these for your father, James said, nodding toward the crates in the wagon bed containing medical supplies, seed for planting, and books. Chief Nantan had expressed a surprising desire to learn to read English, to understand the white man's words for myself. Niol smiled, adjusting the wide-brimmed hat that shaded her face. He will appreciate them. The autumn gathering begins tomorrow. Many stories will be told around the fires. Will you stay for the gathering? James asked, trying to keep his tone casual despite the weight of the question. They had been navigating their relationship carefully these past months. Niol divided her time between her father's people and Thornton Ranch, serving as an interpreter and mediator when needed. James made regular visits to the Apache territory, gradually earning the respect, if not the friendship, of Nantan's band, but they had not yet defined what lay between them, had not put into words the feelings that had grown steadily stronger since that day in Tucson. I will stay for the beginning, Niol replied. But I promised Clara Wilson I would help with the new school. The small school at the edge of Thornton property had been her initiative, a place where both settler and Apache children could learn together, bridging cultures through the next generation. They traveled in companionable silence for a while, the landscape rolling by in sun-dappled beauty. Finally, James guided the wagon to a stop beside a small stream where they had paused on previous journeys. I have something for you, he said as they sat on a sun-warmed rock near the water. From his pocket, he withdrew a small object wrapped in soft leather. Niol accepted it curiously, unwrapping the covering to reveal a silver ring set with a small turquoise stone. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with question. It was my mother's, James explained. I've been carrying it with me for weeks, waiting for the right moment. He took a breath. Niol, these past months have shown me what kind of future is possible, not just for the territory, but for us. You've brought purpose and joy back into my life when I thought those things were behind me. She held the ring carefully, her expression soft but unreadable. James, I'm not asking for an answer today, he continued. I understand the complexities, the challenges we would face. I know your work with your people, with the school, is just beginning. He met her gaze steadily. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I would be honored to call you my wife. Niol closed her hand around the ring, tears shimmering in her eyes. "My father told me once that life is path of many crossings," she said softly. "Some we choose, some choose us." She opened her hand, looking at the ring again. "But when you stopped hanging in Tucson, I thought Great Spirit sent rescuer. Did not know he sent—" She hesitated, searching for the right word. "Partner." "Is that a yes?" James asked, hardly daring to hope. "It is yes to path together," she clarified, a smile warming her features. "Marriage, that will come. When time is right, when both worlds ready." She slipped the ring onto her finger, where it caught the autumn sunlight. "For now, this is promise, between us, before witnesses later." James felt a happiness he had not known since Catherine, different, but no less profound. He leaned forward, and for the first time, their lips met in a kiss that sealed their commitment to each other and to the bridge they were building between worlds. As they continued their journey toward the mountains, the setting sun gilded the landscape in shades of hope. Behind them lay Thornton Ranch, transformed from a lonely empire into the center of a new kind of community. Ahead lay the Apache homeland, where ancient traditions adapted to changing times without surrendering their essence. And between these worlds traveled a cattleman and a chief's daughter who had found in each other the courage to imagine a different future, not just for themselves, but for all those who would follow the trail they were blazing. In years to come, their story would be told around both settler hearths and Apache fires, the tale of a hanging prevented, a war averted, and an unlikely love that helped heal the wounds of a divided land. Some would call it legend, others history. But for those who knew them, it was simply the truth of two souls who recognized in each other the possibility of something extraordinary, and who had the courage to reach across the divide and grasp it with both hands.